Welcome back to TechVerse Reviews 321. Today we're comparing the Sony Alpha A7 IV and Canon EOS R6 Mark II. From autofocus to image quality, video performance and battery life, we'll help you choose the perfect mirrorless camera for 2025. Number 1 Sony Alpha A7 IV Camera Review. The Sony A7V could launch soon. Here are 5 upgrades that could make it the perfect all-rounder. The Sony A7V rumor mill has kicked into gear, which suggests the full-frame all-rounder could land soon. Tipsters speculate that October or November this year. I reckon the latter is more likely, but anything could happen. And the 5th-gen model of the best-selling A7 series can't come soon enough for Sony. Its A7 IV lost the top spot in TechRadar's Best Cameras Guide to subsequent rivals from Canon, the EOS R6 Mark II, and then Nikon, the Z6 III, in 2024. A lengthy tenure in that guide is proof of just how far ahead the Sony A7 IV was at its launch in 2021. However, the powerful Nikon Z6 III, which came 2.5 years late, are equipped with a partially stacked 24MP sensor, delivers an all-around speedier performance and polished video skills, and is rightly regarded as a better pick overall today. Number 1. A new kind of sensor. The new camera leaked 2 A7V images, one of which suggests that the upcoming model will have a 33MP full-frame sensor. That's the same resolution as the A7 IV, and already a sweet spot in the mid-range market. What's less sweet is the performance of the A7IV's sensor. It has known rolling shutter distortion in high-speed shooting and for video. To truly better rivals, the A7V needs a new kind of sensor, even if resolution remains the same. Sony could take inspiration from the Nikon Z6 III, which has a speedier partially stacked sensor with faster readout speeds and none of the issues that plague the A7 IV, albeit with a lower 24MP resolution. If the A7V were to have a speedier 33MP sensor, then it's off to a great start. A global shutter like in the A9 III would be another level, but it is improbable. I'd be surprised if the sensor turns out to be the same one as before. Still, I'm also unconvinced it'll be a stacked or partially stacked type either. Expect a tweaked sensor, perhaps with faster readout speeds and improved stabilization performance. Number 2. An AI chip and improved autofocus performance. This upgrade feels like a safe bet. All current Sony Alpha cameras following the A7 IV, starting with the A7RV, feature an AI chip that powers sophisticated subject detection and tracking autofocus skills. Placing such a feature in the A7V wouldn't tread on the toes of its pricier siblings, the A7RV, A1 II, and A9 III. On the contrary, I'd expect Sony to introduce this upgrade to the A7V. The upshot will be improved autofocus speed and performance for a wider range of subjects. Couple that with a speedier sensor and the A7V would already be shaping up nicely, plus there could be even more performance-based upgrades. Number 3. The latest processor and improved burst shooting. The third upgrade should also center on speed, this time in the form of Sony's latest Bions XR processor and improved burst shooting performance. The A7 IV maxes out at a rudimentary 10 frames per second in its continuous high-speed mode, and those burst sequences don't even last that long before the camera slows down. Rivals like the EOS R6 Mark II and Nikon Z6 III are leagues above, with faster and longer burst shooting capabilities. If the A7V were to combine a stacked or partially stacked 33MP sensor with Sony's latest processor, quicker burst shooting, and versatile AI subject tracking autofocus, it would feel like a much more polished A7 IV, and one that could hold its own against the very best mid-range models of 2025. Another scenario is that Sony introduces a next-generation processor to replace the Bions XR unit. Unlikely perhaps, but added processing power could be key for positioning the A7V above rivals. Number 4. Improved video skills. The A7 IV held top spot in our Best Cameras Guide for such a long time because of its 33MP sensor, which is better for general photography than rivals. However, those lower resolution rivals have upped the bar for high-speed photography and video performance, and the A7V needs to catch up. As already mentioned, it will need to address the rolling shutter distortion that plagues the A7 IV through a sensor with faster readout speeds, but the video specs also need a boost. 4K 60 frames per second with a 1.5x crop won't cut it in 2025. It's a given that the A7V will have much better 4K video recording skills, possibly even 4K 120 frames per second with no crop, and a range of new LUTs and color profiles. The question is, will Sony break ranks from 4K recording and offer detailed 6K like its rivals do? That I'm less sure of. Number 5. Refined displays. I really like how the Sony A7 IV handles, but Sony has since improved its alpha design in subsequent full-frame models, the A7RV, A9 III, and A1 II. Those models feature a two-way tilt/vari-angle touchscreen, which can work for both tilt and out-to-the-side selfies. Rumors suggest the A7V will get such a display, which would trump rivals. There's also speculation that a higher resolution EVF will feature, possibly a 5.76 MDT unit. I'm 50-50 on this one. The recent RX1 R3 didn't get such an upgrade, so the A7V could also miss out. If it does, expect complaints from grumpy reviewers. I expect Sony to take a similar tack to Canon and Nikon, and deliver a speedier successor to the A7 IV that feels more polished than before, without breaking significant new ground. Last number quick prediction. The A7V sensor will be faster, although possibly not to the degree that some hope, while autofocus, burst shooting, and video recording should all receive a major boost, together with tweaks to the camera's design. I'm thinking it could be a lot like the A7RV, but with fewer pixels and a potentially speedier sensor, with an asking price of around $3,200/£2,800/£5,000 Australian dollars. Will the A7V raise the bar once more? Perhaps, but unlikely to the extent that the A7 IV did. At the least, it will put up a good fight and bring Sony back into the mid-range picture. Number 2. Canon EOS R6 Mark II camera review. We tested the Canon EOS R6 II in a nature reserve. Here's our verdict. To put the Canon EOS R6 II through its paces, we took it to a nature reserve in South Wales with one clear goal: photographing wildlife. Armed with the Canon RF 200 to 800mm f/6.3-9 IS USM lens, we wanted to see how well this camera handles the demands of fast, unpredictable subjects in the field. Sitting between the entry-level EOS R8 and the flagship EOS R5 II, the R6 II occupies a sweet spot in Canon's mirrorless lineup. It offers many of the pro-level features found higher up in the range, but at a price that makes it accessible to serious enthusiasts and ambitious beginners. In short, it's designed for photographers who want more than a starter camera, but don't yet need or want to pay for the mega horsepower of Canon's top-end models that many would consider the best cameras for wildlife photography. In terms of the Canon EOS R6 II's design and button layout, it slots neatly between the diminutive R8 and the flagship R5 II. There are enough buttons and dials to keep users happy without making the body look like the cockpit of a 747. The 3 dials give you direct control over your shutter speed, aperture, and ISO without having to dive into the menus, which is exactly what you want when the light is changing fast, or you switch from slow to fast-moving animals. The buttons feel reassuringly chunky and easy to press, contributing to the R6 II being incredibly intuitive when out in the field. Our only gripe, and it's a small one, is that there's only one dedicated custom button. The MFN, multifunction, button on the top plate does pull some weight, and can be set to access various functions like drive mode, AF mode, and white balance. Not to seem ungrateful, but coming from Sony cameras and their trio of C1, C2, and C3 buttons, we found ourselves wanting more buttons to customize. But for the price, one is absolutely fine. The R6 II gets the fundamentals right, and that's what really counts. The fully articulating screen is bright, sharp, and responsive. While the EVF isn't the biggest or brightest we've come across, it holds its own and performs consistently in changing light. Connectivity is well catered for, with 2 card slots that support UHS-I and UHS-2 SD/SDHC/SDXC memory cards, plus a microphone jack, headphone jack, a remote control port, a USB-C port, and a micro HDMI port for video output. There's an additional USB-C charging port tucked into the battery compartment on the underside of the camera body. All the ports are easy to access, and crucially, the screen doesn't block them when it's flipped out. In the hand, the R6 II hits that Goldilocks zone. Not too big, not too small. It balances nicely, even with a long wildlife lens attached, and feels comfortable over longer shoots. At 23.6 ounces, 670 g, it's light enough not to weigh you down in the field, but still substantial enough to feel robust. Sure, there are lighter cameras out there, but this one gets the balance just right. The 24.2 MP sensor delivers sharp, detailed images that punch well above its price point. For overall image quality, there's little to fault. That said, considering it's the next step up from the Canon EOS R8, we'd hoped for a bump in resolution. Matching the 32.5 MP resolution of the crop sensor Canon R7 would have given the R6 II an even sweeter spot between the R8 and the 45 MP powerhouse that is the Canon EOS R5 II. As it stands, 24 MP is more than enough for most shooters, but resolution is likely the biggest reason some might be tempted to upgrade later. The autofocus was solid and reliable, but not the headline act here. It did a good job locking onto subjects, even when they weren't facing the camera, and Canon's generic animal detection mode handled birds and other mammals well enough that a dedicated bird mode would feel unnecessary. That said, it wasn't bulletproof. In our tests, the R6 II occasionally got confused. It struggled with backlit birds that were partially obscured by grass, and it missed focus entirely when we tried photographing a pigeon nestled among branches. None of the 8 frames we took were usable. On the flip side, it tracked birds in flight reasonably well, keeping them in focus more often than not. On the whole, the R6 II handles noise quite well. Because we were shooting with a slower aperture lens, we often had to push the ISO higher than we otherwise would, which made it a good stress test for the sensor. Even then, noise was only really noticeable in the darker areas of the frame, and rarely to the point of spoiling a shot. Plus, with modern noise reduction software being as good as it is, high ISO performance is less of a deal-breaker than it used to be, and the R6 II's files clean up nicely. Saifola. We didn't get a chance to put it through a dedicated astrophotography test, as the super telephoto lens wasn't ideal for that, but given how it handles noise overall, we're confident it would be a capable contender for night sky shooters. In a nutshell, the R6 II is what the R8 would be if it went through a glow-up after a bad breakup. On the inside, they share the same 24.2 megapixel full-frame CMOS sensor and Digic X processor alongside the same blistering 40 fps burst rate. But with the addition of image stabilization, more focus points, 4097 versus 1053 in the R8, a higher battery life, 580 versus 290 shots on the R8, and a 56% higher EVF resolution, the Canon EOS R6 II is the clear choice for beginner wildlife photographers. Speaking of which, the 40 fps burst rate is a real asset for wildlife, sports, or any kind of fast-action photography. On top of that, the raw burst mode shoots a continuous stream of images, locked at 30 fps, saving everything into a single CR3 file from which you can later extract individual frames. It keeps the card tidy, but you'll need to do the extracting either in camera or with Canon software. The R6 II doesn't have blackout-free shooting, but we found the blackout to be minimal, and honestly it was barely noticeable. It certainly didn't get in the way while we were shooting. Pre-capture takes things a step further by recording half a second of action before you even fully press the shutter. A lifesaver when you're trying to catch unpredictable moments like a bird taking flight or coming into land. Together, these modes give you a serious safety net, making it far less likely you'll miss the important shot. Unless you're a pro who needs serious resolution or you just want a super simple point-and-shoot, the Canon EOS R6 II is an easy recommendation. It comes into its own for wildlife photography, and it's clear that the camera has been designed with this in mind. We loved its handling and the overall user experience, how effortlessly it handled fast shooting and never seemed to trip over itself when recording images to the card, and the image quality is great too. As we mentioned, we'd have liked to see a bump in resolution, but that would also incur a bump in the cost, and we think that, for what it is overall, it's exceptionally well priced for a camera as capable as this. It's fast, reliable, and a joy to shoot with. It's an ideal mid-range camera that'll suit a lot of photographic styles and keep users happy for a long time. Thanks for watching at TechVerse Reviews 321. If you enjoyed this Sony versus Canon camera comparison, Give a thumbs up, subscribe for more tech reviews, and comment which camera you'd pick. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on the latest tech.